Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what a singleton is, okay? What is a singleton? A singleton is an object that can only have one instance at a time, and the singleton can be accessed globally in the app. So this right here, excuse me, is an example of a singleton. So a singleton is an object that, yeah, we look at these examples right here. This is a singleton. Basically, you have a variable, a static let that equals the class. And your initializer is private, so you can't create a separate instance of this. And this is how it looks when you create an instance, but you can only have one instance at a time of a singleton. So that means if you create this on one controller and then go to another controller and do this same thing, you guys are really referencing the same singleton, the same object, not a different object, but the same one. Okay, what are the pros and cons of using a singleton? Singletons provide a global point of access to a shared resource, which can make it easier to manage and use resources in different parts of your code. Meaning, yes, you create an instance, you are accessing the same shared object no matter where you are in your code. Singletons can help reduce the number of instances of a class that were created, which can be useful when the class is expensive, initializing logic, or when the resources it uses are limited. Yes, it does reduce the number of instances because you can only have one instance at a time, no matter what. And when you use it, if you do have an object that is a singleton that uses a lot of resources, you know, you're going to be accessing the same instance all the time. So you're not reloading, you're not creating more instances and using more resources. You're referencing that same instance. Singletons can provide a convenient way to store and access global state or configuration information. Yes, you can use a singleton just like a way that you're of data persistence per se, right? And you can hold global state or configuration information in a singleton. Okay. The cons of a singleton. Singletons can make it more difficult to test and maintain code that depends on them because a shared instance can be modified by any part of your code. This can make it harder to predict the state of the singleton and to write test cases that are isolated from other parts of your code. Yes, because remember, when you do unit tests, there is a setup and a teardown. This is done to make sure that the instance that you have in your unit test does not exist somewhere else or outside of the unit test, which is impossible with a singleton. Why? Because you can't have more than one instance, right? Um, Singletons can make it harder to reason about the state of your program because shared instances can be modified by any part of your code. This can make it more difficult to understand how different parts of your program interact with each other. Singletons can lead to tighter coupling between different parts of your code because they rely on a shared resource that is accessed globally. This can make it harder to modify or replace individual parts of your code without affecting other parts that depend on the singleton. And singletons can be less efficient than other patterns because they create a shared resource that is accessed globally. This can be particularly costly if the shared resource is expensive to create and if it requires a lot of memory. Why is dependency injection important for testing? Why? The main reason is that separating dependencies makes code decoupled and easier to test. For example, in a networking service, you can separate the functionality that builds a URL object or parse the data or creates the custom objects and so on. When you break the app up into smaller components, unit testing becomes more reliable. And That's it for now. I'm going to show practical examples in code, and you can follow along. But for now, on to the next.